So get this, what if just sharing an article online could land you in prison, like for almost 2 years? Sounds crazy, right? Well, for Dr. Chen Jingyuan, a physicist and a scholar, this wasn't some hypothetical. It actually happened. Today, we're going to unpack his incredible case and see what it tells us about this collision course between free speech, state power, and, well, a person's own conscience. Before we dive into all the legal stuff, the arguments and counterarguments, I think it's really important we just take a second to understand the human cost here. These are Dr. Chen's own words, written while he was in prison, and they're a powerful reminder. This isn't just some abstract case study for a textbook. We're talking about a real person's life, his career, just being taken apart, piece by piece. All right, so who is this scholar, and what on earth was in these posts that he shared? What did he do that was so bad it was considered a crime? Let's get right into the basics. Okay, so first things first, let's be super clear about who Dr. Chen is. We're not talking about some famous political activist or a well-known dissident. He described himself as just an independent scholar. No ties to political parties, no big economic groups behind him. Just a guy with a PhD in physics, specifically in nonlinear complex systems. A serious academic. And here's the part that is just mind-boggling. The so-called crime? He wasn't accused of making anything. He didn't create fake news or disinformation. His entire offense was literally just forwarding content that was already out there. We're talking about things like cartoons, academic papers, social commentary, and even a speech by a US president. He just hit share. So what was the official charge they hit him with? It's something called picking quarrels and provoking trouble. Now, this is a famously, let's say, flexible charge. It's super broad, really vaguely defined, and it gets used a lot in cases that have to do with what people say online. It basically gives the authorities a ton of room to interpret what a crime is. Okay, so you're probably wondering, how in the world did the court justify this? How does a legal system even begin to rationalize throwing a scholar in prison for sharing a few posts? Well, the official court documents, they give us a pretty startling look into exactly how they reasoned this out. The whole legal argument really boiled down to two key things. First, the prosecution had to prove that Dr. Chen knew the stuff he was sharing was false. And second, they had to prove it caused serious public disorder. But here's the thing. The court's findings weren't based on hard evidence. They were based on, well, assumptions. For the first point, they basically said, hey, he's got a PhD. He should have known better. And for the whole serious disorder thing, they just said it happened. No proof, no numbers, nothing. So naturally, Dr. Chen appealed the verdict. And what happened? The appeal was shut down. Fast. The higher court's ruling was super brief and just final. It basically said the original judgment was perfect. Clear facts, sufficient evidence, the whole 9 yards. And just like that, the door to any further legal challenge was slammed shut. Okay, to really get our heads around a legal system that can work like this, we've got to step outside the courtroom for a minute. We need to look into political philosophy, and specifically at the work of a thinker named Hannah Arendt. Now, Arendt came up with this really powerful idea after she went to the trial of Adolf Eichmann, who was a high-ranking Nazi official. And what blew her mind was that he wasn't some kind of diabolical, cartoonish monster. He was a bureaucrat, a paper pusher who was just obsessed with following the rules and procedures. She said he was terrifyingly normal, and that his evil didn't come from some deep-seated hatred, but from a simple, total refusal to think. And that right there is the heart of her argument. The biggest danger isn't always some evil mastermind with a plan. Sometimes it's just the complete absence of critical thought. It's what happens when people stop asking why and just become cogs in the machine. Which brings us back to Dr. Chen's trial, and this just jaw-dropping quote from the prosecutor. Someone asked him if he had actually checked to see if the posts Chen shared were true or not. His response, "I have not verified it, nor do I intend to verify it." I mean, wow. That's Arendt's idea in a nutshell. His job, as he saw it, wasn't to find the truth. It was just to get a conviction. So when you look at this case through Arendt's lens, the parallels are pretty chilling. You see how criminalizing speech makes that public space for debate just disappear. You see the state creating its own reality, where it can just label something true as false information. And you see the whole system chugging along on this banality of evil, where officials don't think, they just do their jobs. So the big question is, what do you do when you're up against that?
a huge, unthinking system. Well, Dr. Chen's response wasn't just about legal tactics. It went much, much deeper. It was philosophical.
He went right at the court's main argument, that he should have known what was true or false. He actually brought up Plato's allegory of the cave, arguing that, as a scholar, he's like a prisoner in that cave, only ever seeing shadows of the real truth. So for him, his duty wasn't to claim he knew the absolute truth. It was to stay open, to stay critical, and to look at all the information he could. And to fight back against that charge of causing serious disorder? His defense on that point was just brilliantly simple. He pointed out that his social media account had less than 100 followers, and most of them weren't even active. His question was just common sense. How could I possibly cause a major public disturbance with an audience that small? This whole thing, this clash between what one person believes is right and what the law says, it's a timeless problem. It really makes you think of someone like Henry David Thoreau, who argued that your first duty isn't to blindly follow the law, it's to follow your conscience, to do what's right. And that's exactly the path Dr. Chen chose, the path of conscience. He didn't back down. From his prison cell, he actually doubled down. He wrote this blood letter. And he wasn't just defending himself anymore. He went on the offensive, calling the officials who prosecuted him a corrupt mafia. He absolutely refused to just be a quiet victim. So in the end, this case is about so much more than just one man in one country. It really forces us, all of us, to think about that very fragile line between the individual, the power of the state, and what justice really means. And it leaves us with this huge, timeless question. When the law tells you to do one thing and your conscience tells you to do another, what is your duty?